Okay. Okay, so let's do some chanting again today, like we did last time. So does anyone have any more people they want to have in a chanting book? Burr, normally you have many people. Do you have anyone for the chanting book? Yeah. Yep. You already put in there? Yeah? No. Okay, you're fine. Yeah, of course. Yeah, just now's the time.
My grandmother's hip, she has an injured hip.
You want to put it in there? Yeah. Just pass it on to anyone else who has anything. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Should we wait till the 1:15, Radha, to start? Because of, is that a good idea?
Online.
Sorry?
There's one viewer online.
Okay, maybe we should wait.
Three viewers online.
Okay, maybe we just give people a chance to get online before we start. Is anyone missing here? Everyone is here? Yeah? Anyone that's here is here. Okay, maybe we can just do the chanting and then we can get started with the sutta afterwards. So we just do, I think, what we did last time, if everyone is okay with that, just do the Metta Sutta in Pali. And it is for the following people, for Wayne Finn, who has cancer treatment. He's in here twice now, but that's okay. Did you put him in there, Nicholas? Okay, yeah, okay. And then there is someone called Wayne Corkill with heart operation, John Mayers, mental health support, Matt Gibson with operation for pain management and support. Are you here, Matt? No, not here. Okay. Annette Gomez, Nguyen's mother, bedridden due to old age. Sisira Kumara, Nguyen's cousin, recovery from cancer. Ten Xing Myung, passed away this afternoon. Okay, may she have a good rebirth. Grace Chow for her well-being. She's the one who comes used to come every Monday. Ho Gua Eng, well-being. Is that your mum? Okay, good. Celine and Jamie, success in buying a house. well-being and happiness, and for Evandi Sendaviratna, suffering from PTSD, heart and kidney issues. Pam Russell, who died today at age 84 from blood clot after taking the COVID vaccination. Oh, really? Okay, it's one of those rare cases. Alicia Waters, for mental well-being and assistance finding a home. Cora Pritchard, for good health and well-being. For Janhat Varusavitarana in Colombo. He's one of our big supporters in Colombo, part of the Ajahn Brahmali Society of Sri Lanka. For safety to UK, success. Oh, that's his daughter. Okay, so she's going to go to Cambridge University. Okay, that's good. Robert Grosh, who is an old friend who has a cancer operation. Apparently he's slowly dying from cancer. And then Wayne Finnegan. And then Janisha Jayasekara, who has some personal difficulties, a young man. And Pricha Tunkasirivet, who passed away that's actually a number of years ago now. Let's do some chanting for her as well. Him, rather. And then Jong Luk's, of the same family, his wife passed away a year before that. And then we have, the last one is Dorothy Cosgrove, who recovered from hip injury. That's your grandma, is it? Okay. Okay, that's it. No last chance. This is the last chance. Okay, so let's do the Metta Sutta together in Pali as we did last time. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Karaniya mata kusalena yanta santang padang abhisame chasako uju chasuhuju chasuvacho chasamudu anatimani santu sako chasubaro chapakicho chasalahukavute santendriyo chanipako chapagabo kulesu ananugido nachakudang samachare kinshiye navinyupare Upavadeyung sukino vakemino hontu sabe sata bhavantu sukitata yeke chepa nabutati tasava tavarava anavasesa dighava Ye mahanta va majima rasaka anukatula tita va yecha adita yecha dure vasanti avidure bhuta va sambhave seva Sabe sata bhavantu sukitata naparo parang nikubetanatima yetaka tachinang kinshimbayaro sana patiga sanya nanya manya Sadhu kami cheya mata yata niyang putang ayusa eka puta manurake evam pisa babute sumanasang bhavaye aparimanang metan shasa balokasmeng manasang bhavaye aparimanang udang ado chatiriyan shasang badang averang asapatang titan sharang nisinova sayanova yavata savigata medo etang sating aditeya brahma metang viharang idamahudi tenshanu silava tasanena sampano kame suvinaya gedang nahi jatu gabaseya punaretiti. Okay, very good. Just add a couple of names at the very end. But Venerable Chanda in there for her gastritis. Yeah. And Frank Chu for his business and family. Yeah. Okay, put Ajahn Brahmali as well. Okay. Okay, everyone. So, welcome back to part 2 of, we don't know how many parts, but hopefully see if we can get to the end today. Not as many as the Mahaparibhana Sutta, which went for a long time, so it would be a short one. Maybe we should have one talk for each of the factors. That would be interesting, and go on for a while. Now, I hope not to do that because it's different kind of talks. Some talks are overview talks, some are detailed talks about all the aspects. So this is more like an overview kind of talk of what is happening here. So last time we had a quick look at this table you see behind me here, and I just pointed out some of the kind of the interesting aspects here. And one of the points I made last time, just to kind of reinforce that, so you can see what's going on there, is that I have shifted one of the factors in the sutta. What you see on the left is the sutta we're doing now, AN10.76, called the Tayo Dhamma Sutta, which basically means 3 things or 3 qualities. And the thing in green towards the bottom there is the one that I've shifted down. So that has been shifted down by 2 items down. So it has gone down 2 items. And that is in accordance with the versions in other languages, in Sanskrit and also in Chinese. So it has been taken that one 2 down. So now it's the 3rd from the bottom. It used to be the 5th from the bottom before, that one in green there, which is about giving up, not wanting to see the noble ones, etc. And it's very hard to know with absolute certainty which version is correct, but there are some indications, in my opinion, which makes the other version, this one here in Sanskrit, more likely to be right, and that's why I've shifted it down. And one of the reasons for that is that this is a kind of standard sequence. That fits into the right place in the sequence. And the thing about oral literature, the suttas are oral literature, things tend to be fairly standardized. You cannot have too many variations. You cannot change things around too much because it becomes very hard to remember. But when things have a standard sequence and there's a certain logic to it, it's easy to remember what is going on. So that is one good reason to move it down. And the second good reason is simply that we have 2 versions that actually have that sequence, whereas the Pali is the single version which does not have that sequence. It's interesting, when you look at the commentary to the Pali, the commentary says this is uttana. Uttana means it's like straightforward, so it doesn't have any comments on the sutta. The sutta is so easy, no need for any comments. That's what the commentary says, and yet the sequence is a little bit unusual, so I'm not sure exactly why the commentary says that. I guess I can't comment on everything here. So this is one of those interesting things, and I'm going to assume for the rest of the talk that it is that version in Sanskrit and Chinese which is correct. So I'm going to use the sequence you see here. That's one interesting thing. Another interesting thing that you will notice, I have highlighted a couple of things, 2 things in yellow and 2 things in blue. And they are the same. The 2 things in yellow are essentially the same qualities, and the 2 things in blue also the same qualities. But what is interesting about them is that they occur in different places in the sequence. You have giving up improper attention. Well, that's the same thing as having proper attention, the same thing as you have down the bottom. This is yoniso manasikara, a very famous term in the Pali Suttas, and it occurs in different places. So, which is interesting, and why is that the case? Well, first of all, it shows that things are not always absolutely fixed in the suttas. There are variations, and if there were no variations, it'd be very boring after a while. If everything was exactly the same, you've got to have a few variations. But so how do we understand this? And one of the things to remember about the suttas is that they are basically about psychology. They are about psychological qualities that you can develop. You can have them to a small extent, you can have them to a middling extent, you can have them to a high extent. So almost all of these qualities can be put almost anywhere on the path, because they are just qualities. They don't have any fixed position as such. And so when the Buddha places them in a fixed position, it's like he's deciding, I'm going to use this term in a particular way. And you may find that if you read other literature, like you read some of the literature of the Brahmanical literature, the Vedas, and that sort of thing, they will use these terms differently. This is a specific Buddhist way of using these terms. So they could really go anywhere. That's why sometimes they go in different places, but they tend to have a specific position on the path. Sati tends to be the word for meditation practice. This is like the anapanasati and all of these kind of things. So it's specifically used there, but it doesn't have it to be used in that way. It could be used different ways. And the same is true for yoniso manasikara. But there are certain places where this idea of proper attention or wise attention is particularly powerful, where it really matters the most. And these are 2 of those places where it is particularly powerful. It can be used anywhere on the path. You always need yoniso manasikara. If you're going to improve in good qualities and go down in bad ones, you always have to have yoniso manasikara. In fact, that is one of the definitions of yoniso manasikara in the suttas. If you look at the Sabhasava Sutta, all the 10s, Majjhima Nikaya number 2, you find the definition pretty much of yoniso manasikara there. And it basically says yoniso manasikara is whenever the good qualities are going up, the bad are going down. But that can be anywhere on the path. But here, the way it is used here is you see, first of all, you have if you look at the top one of the 2, on the left-hand side there, that comes just before you have the breakthrough to stream entry. It may not be obvious to you, but when you're giving up identity, view, doubt, and misapprehension of precepts and observance, that is just another way of saying stream entry. So it's just before stream entry. And of course, at that point, having proper attention is really, really valuable. That is when it's absolutely critical. And it has to be absolute in a sense. There can be no defilement to that proper attention at that point. It has to be pure. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make that breakthrough, because that is where you see things fully according to reality. So that's a very important point. And the other important point here is the one which is further down in the middle column, and that comes after listening to the teachings of the Buddha. You have to listen to the true teachings of the Buddha, the saddhamma, as it's called in the suttas. Faith arises, and from that faith, that's when you start to attend in a way that accords with those teachings. Because you heard the teachings, you listen to them, and then the yoniso manasikara arises from that. So these are kind of 2 critical junctures on the path. But you could have proper attention anywhere. You could say, even just deciding to listen to the teachings, that's proper attention, So even meditating in the right way, deciding to be kind, deciding to give up the bad things. All of this is proper attention in a certain way. But these are kind of the places where the Buddha places them specifically to make a particular point. So that's the only Manasikarta. I'm going to talk more about that in a second here. So, I'm just a bit worried about that. Yeah, we'll see. You just tell me when Ajahn was asking me how long I was going to go on for today. So we'll see. We were talking about midnight. I hope you're okay with midnight. Any problems with midnight? We'll see what happens. So the other thing here is this thing which is translated by Bhante Sujato as situational awareness. Yeah, this is sampajanya in the sutras that he translates in this way. Another very important word in the sutras, often compounded with sati. You find sati sampajanya, and again you see it in two different places here. So what is going on? And what is going on is that sampajanya, again, is something that you do find in different places. Specifically, you find it very often together with sense restraint. Yeah, having clarity about what to do, how to approach things in your life so as not to give rise to defilements. Yeah, that is really what sampajanya is about. Maybe we can talk a bit more about it later on. But it also is an aspect of meditation as well. So the higher one of the two, the one on the left-hand side in the left-hand column there, the higher one, that is sampajanya as it is as part of meditation practice. Yeah? When you meditate, you also have to have sampajanya because you have to know how to apply yourself in the right way, etc., etc. So again, this too can occur in two different places, but typically it occurs in those two places in the sutras. But again, it could really be anywhere as well. So this is just to give you an idea of how the Buddha uses words and terminology. Yeah, he tends to take a word and give it a specific meaning for a specific place on the path. Even though it could be used anywhere, he tends to do that. So you should not expect it to be 100% consistent, precisely because it can be used anywhere, but it will be reasonably consistent. If it is used without any context, so you don't really know, then you can assume that the majority context is the one that applies. So for example, a very important part of that is when you see a word like samadhi, and very often you will see the word samadhi without context. And you know, what does it mean if it's without context? It can mean anything, right? Maybe just now you're listening with samadhi, okay, this is samadhi. Maybe it means that. But no, if samadhi occurs without context, you can be almost sure that it means jhanas. And the reason is because that is the most important use of the word samadhi in the sutras. Yeah? So never assume that it means anything less than that. That will always be the majority meaning. If you see the word sati, it will usually mean satipatthana or anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing. These are the core aspects of sati in the sutras, etc., etc. Sense restraint will usually mean the normal sense restraint formula, etc. Okay, so that's just to remind you of what we did last time. Now I'm going to carry on with the in more detail with the things that we looked at before. No, that's not so interesting. We'll leave that one out. So this is the sutta again, the Three Things Sutta. And let's go through this quickly. This is what we had looked at last time. So this is the end point of the sutta. Yeah, this is the problem. This is what we're trying to resolve. And as I said last time, this basically just refers to samsaric existence. Yeah, this kind of continuing going on with ongoing problems and not really stopping. So what is and the purpose of this whole sutta is to show the causes, why these things happen, how we overcome them. So what is the cause of this? It is greed, hate, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion, if you like something a bit more down to earth. And it's a very interesting idea that this is the cause for old age and death. Yeah, greed, hate, and delusion. It's not obvious why that should be the case. What does greed have to do with death? And most people wouldn't get that. It's not really, it's not clear to an ordinary person on the street. You have to understand the Buddhist framework to understand what is going on here. And of course, the point is that these are the defilements that carry on the cycle of rebirth. This is why you get reborn. So these are the things that propel you into the future, project you into the future. And without those, the process of rebirth stops. And that is why this is the cause or the condition here for suffering and for the moving onwards of this round of rebirth as it kind of carries on and on and on. So it's kind of specialized. You wouldn't really understand this unless you are a Buddhist, because it's not actually very obvious at all. So what is the cause for desire, ill will, and delusion? This is where we stopped last time. So we're going to have a look at this. The next one, what is the cause for this? And the answer is the following three. The identity view, doubt, and it says here misapprehension of precepts and observances. And of course, these are the three fetters, the three things that you abandon when you become a stream enterer. And so you have to first to become a stream enterer, then you can become an arahant. Ending of greed, hatred, and delusion is, of course, arahantship. So you have to get these things in the right sequence. First stream entry, then you become an arahant. You cannot abandon these things without being a stream enterer first. And that's quite interesting already. This was some point that Ajahn Brahmali, I remember he mentioned this to me many, many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, something that's still stuck in my mind. It's kind of amazing. Some of these teachings kind of get really stuck in there. But he made this point that a lot of people try to overcome ill will and desire, especially ill will, because that's more of an obvious one. They try to overcome ill will, but you cannot overcome ill will unless you are a stream enterer. It's impossible. It is always going to be part of your psychological makeup. It will always tend to come back. You can maybe get rid of it for a while. You can practice a lot of metta. You can maybe even kind of keep it at bay for long periods of time. But it will always come back because it is an aspect of this identity view, an aspect of the feeling or the sense of a self. When there is a sense of self, there will be desire, there will be ill will, there will be delusion. That's just the way it is. Why? Because a sense of self needs to protect itself. It needs to satisfy itself and all of these kind of things. And these things, protection and satisfaction, are precisely desire and ill will. So you have to do that. You have to get things in the right sequence. So don't be surprised if you have a bit of ill will sometimes. And so that's kind of nice. You don't have to feel too guilty about this. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything about it, of course, but it means that it is a natural part of having a sense of self, is that we have these defilements of the mind. So don't judge yourself too harshly. Have compassion for yourself. They say that one of the most powerful things we can have as human beings is a sense of self-compassion. And I don't know about you, but I found that in my own life. When I kind of feel things are going badly, I always tend to have a sense of compassion for myself. I think, what do you expect? This is human life. This is the way it has to be. And you never really feel that bad about yourself if you always have that sense of self-compassion there. It's a very kind of nice way of thinking about things. You're not in charge of your defilements. Your defilements are in charge of you. So how can you expect to overcome these things, at least not straight away, maybe over time, but not straight away. And that's kind of a way of having a self-compassion. So what does this mean, these three things? And one of the important things about these three fetters, Sangyojana, is that this is not a description of what you need to do to become a stream enterer. It doesn't mean that we should kind of, stop holding on to precepts and observances. It doesn't mean that we should kind of fight to overcome identity view, anything like that, or try not to have identity view. It doesn't really mean that. What it means is that this is the result of stream entry. And it is important to make that distinction in the suttas, those things that are the aspects of the path, things that we have to do to make sure the path makes forward, aspects of the path on the one hand, and results on the path on the other hand. And it's important not to mix those things up, because if you mix those things up, you're very unlikely to make progress. This is a result of the path. This is what comes out of practicing in the right way, and they are not so much descriptions of what to do. Because what happens sometimes is that, and this is the thing I hear, I'm trying not to cling to my precepts because, otherwise I can't become a stream enterer. No, that's the wrong way of thinking. Yeah, that's completely wrong. You should cling to your precepts. Hold on to them for dear life. These are important. Yeah, this is the result of practice. It's not what you should do to get there. These precepts matter. I don't mean hold on too strongly, of course, because that becomes painful, but we should, a little bit of attachment to these things is a positive thing here. If you had no attachment, you'd be doing all kind of crazy things. Yeah? You'd be out of here in no time if you didn't have an attachment to these precepts. That is what keeps us in the robe, is a part of it, that little bit of attachment, the faith in the Dhamma or whatever. So we need to get these things right. In fact, I disagree with this translation. Yeah, I should have a misapprehension is not really the right translation. The Pali word is paramasa, same word as found in the second Sanghadisesa rule of the bhikkhus, where it is paramasana, means to touch, touch someone. And here is the same word. It doesn't mean misapprehension, it just means apprehension. Yeah, you hold on to these things. Yeah, so this is what you stop doing when you become a streamer. You don't hold on to these things anymore. Why? Because these become part of you. It is natural for you to keep precepts and live in the right way when you are a streamer. You don't need to hold on. Prior to that, we actually need to hold on. That's kind of the point here. They are called aparamatta. This is straight from the sutras. They're called aparamatta, which means not held onto. Yeah, it's a past participle of the same kind of verb or this kind of construction here. So a stream enterer does not need to hold on because it's a natural part of the psychology that they are virtuous, they follow their precepts, and they deal with observances in the right way. Yeah, whether that is just bowing down to the Buddha or whatever, or not understanding observances as leading to the way it is explained in the commentaries. Is that holding on to observances means that you believe that certain observances will lead to awakening in their own right. Yeah, if you bow to the Buddha, or you just you kind of follow certain, you sit meditation at least 1 hour every day. If you just do that, you become enlightened eventually. Well, not necessarily. It depends on how you sit your meditation. Right? There's more to it than just doing it. So this is the difference here between observing and doing the observance intelligently, so it actually has an effect in your particular practice. So these are then the results, and this is how it comes out. And the same thing with identity view. Of course, it is useful to reduce the sense of self. The sense of self is a big nuisance. It leads to all kinds of problems, but you cannot expect to overcome it just by thinking in the right way. You have to follow the path. That's how you overcome it eventually. The same thing with doubt. Of course, we try to overcome doubt, but the final overcoming, the elimination, happens through the path itself. So what is this thing we call identity view? And it's an interesting term. The Pali word is sakkaya ditthi. Yeah? Ditthi, of course, is view. Sakkaya is a word which is composed of two parts, sat on the one hand and kaya on the other. And sat is a verb which comes from the verb to be in Pali. So it means like existing. Yeah? And it's something existing. Yeah? That's why this is one of the reasons why sometimes it's translated as the view of existence view. And then kaya, of course, is a word which is sometimes translated as a body. Yeah? So one translation of this is then the view of an existing body. Yeah? And this shows you how dangerous it is, how important it is to get your translations right. Because the way that Sakkaya Ditthi is explained in other places in the sutras is always with reference to the 5 khandhas. And of course, the 5 khandhas, the body, rupa, is only one part. The most important aspects of the 5 khandhas are the mental aspects. Yeah? So Sakkaya Ditthi actually refers to the entire makeup of a human being, all 5 khandhas. So it refers to the idea that we exist somehow in relation to these 5 khandhas. And this explains that those relations can be anything. Yeah? You can either take yourself to be that khandha, I am consciousness. Yeah? Or you can be the owner of that khandha. I am the owner of my will. I'm not the will, but I own the will. Yeah, I control it. I'm in charge of the will. Yeah, this kind of the idea where I own the body. This is my body. Don't touch my body. This is my property right here. Yeah. Or perceptions, yeah, whatever it is. Or it can be that you are in that khandha, or the khandha is in you. Yeah, I am the conscious khandha, or I'm the body, but these mental factors are in me, or something like that. So it is all these kind of different ways in how we find a sense of self inside, within these 5 khandhas. Yeah? This is what it is about. And it's kind of set out, I think it's in the Shula Vedalla Sutta, I think, either that one or the Maha Vedalla Sutta, either Majjhima 43 or 44, I think, where you find this detailed description of this identity view. Yeah? So it's set out in this way. So there's 5 khandhas, and there's 4 different ways you can relate to these 5 khandhas. There are 20 ways in all. And it's very kind of theoretical, right? You wonder how do we actually relate to this? How do we actually deal with this in a good way? Because it seems very theoretical. And one of the most important things to understand the 5 khandhas is the 5 khandhas is what you experience right now. This is the 5 khandhas. Whenever you have an experience of any kind, that is the 5 khandhas, and that is what we are relating to. So when we look at this idea of Sakkaya Ditthi, it is how you are relating to your experience right now. What do you take to be yourself at this particular moment? And that may not be very obvious to you. Yeah, it may not be very clear. It's maybe this kind of gray, amorphous idea of who you are. I am, not sure, But it's a sense that you are. That sense of, that feeling that you are something, that is the problem. And that is kind of the revolution in consciousness that happens from before stream entry to after stream entry. Your very relationship to yourself has changed completely. That feeling that you have, that you exist in a certain way, is suddenly gone. And that is kind of the distinction here between these things. So this is what we're trying to uncover, and this is how the next factor, as we saw before, is then yoniso manasikara. Yeah? So we need to attend to these 5 khandhas in the right way. And that's why yoniso manasikara is then the cause for undoing identity view. We need to attend in the right way. And I will come to that. I will talk more about that when I come to yoniso manasikara rather than doing that now. But essentially it means attending to the 5 khandhas. That's what it means. Attending to them in the right way. In your experience right here, right now, that is what you're attending to, especially when your meditation starts to come together. So that is the idea of identity view, Sakkaya Ditthi. And I want to make this point, which I think is very important to understand. The word kaya in the suttas does not, in some context, it means physical body. But the root meaning of the word is not really that. The root meaning is a conglomeration of phenomena, things coming together, a grouping of things. Yeah? And it can mean a lot of different things depending on the context. And here, obviously, cannot mean the body. It's specifically defined as not meaning the body. Yeah? So what we have to do, we have to think of it in this broader idea as personality, as identity. So often this is called personality view, because it has to do with your entire makeup as a person, who you are. Personality view, in other words, I am, this permanent phenomenon, somehow related to the 5 khandhas. So please remember that when you read Kaya in the suttas, because this can be very confusing. And this is where a lot of the arguments and discussions come about the meaning of the jhanas, for example. Because some of the similes in the jhanas, they use the word Kaya. And then people then say, well, look, it used the word Kaya, it means you experience your body. No, it doesn't mean that, because the word Kaya does not mean body, in those formulas. And this allows you a different way of thinking about these things. And it does matter, it matters a lot, because unless you practice the path all the way, you're not going to get the results. So if you misinterpret the jhanas, you have a problem. You may not practice the path all the way, the results are not going to come. So these things actually are very important. And this is why it's very useful to have very well-practiced teachers. People like Ajahn Brahmali or whoever else who really have a lot of experience with these things. It's very extraordinarily useful, because it helps you to, it makes it easy to approach the suttas in the right way. So anyway, I'll come back to this in a second. Then we have identity view, we have doubt rather. And doubt in the sutta is vicikiccha. Yeah, you overcome it at this point, but of course we need to overcome doubt gradually. How do you do that? Well, you do that every step of the path. You are overcoming doubt. Yeah, it's just you're gaining more clarity by reading the suttas, of course, by meditation. All of these things overcome doubt. What does doubt mean? What are we actually overcoming? And the way that it is explained in the suttas, the overcoming of doubt, is that you have doubt about wholesome qualities. Kusalesu dhammesu vicikiccha. Yeah, that's what you have doubt about. So doubt is always with reference to a very specific thing that has to do with our spiritual practice, not other things at all, purely focused on the spiritual practice. Kusalesu dhammesu. Kusala means good, wholesome, healthy, yeah, that kind of thing. And Dhamma is this meaning, is word which can have different meanings in different contexts, but the two main meanings in the suttas is qualities. Yeah, like personal qualities. That's one of the main meaning, or qualities of mind, if you like. And the other main meaning is Dhamma, as in teaching. Yeah, and both of these meanings, I would say, apply here. But the most important one is probably the idea of Dhamma as a quality, a mental quality. Yeah, so you know which mental qualities are good and which are bad. Yeah, this is what you know. So when you, as long as we have doubt, we don't really know this properly yet. Once you become a stream mentor, you know exactly which qualities, mental qualities are good and which ones are bad. Very useful, right? And the problem is, a large part of the problem of meditation practice is this ability to really distinguish properly between good and bad qualities. Very often when you meditate, you come up against a certain point where meditation doesn't go any deeper. Why doesn't it go any deeper? Well, one of the reasons is because of this inability to properly distinguish between good and bad qualities. You're feeling peaceful, yeah, you're feeling kind of mind is fairly clear. Yeah, there's no real problems in meditation, but somehow it doesn't go any further. Why does it stop? And the reason it stopped is because there is some quality there which you cannot see that is blocking you from going deeper. And usually the kind of qualities that will be there will be you holding on to something, yeah. But the holding is so subtle. The holding is so you can't really understand. You are maybe holding on to your senses. You don't want to let your body go any further, or whatever it is. But it's so subtle that it can be very difficult to see that. And that is the kind of doubt we are talking about here. Yeah. So have a lot of clarity about your mental state, what is good and what is bad. And then, of course, that is very, very helpful for developing the mind. And a lot of the teachings that you find in the Satipatthana Sutta, for example, or in the Bojjhangas, are precisely about this focusing, investigating good and bad qualities. Yeah, if you go to the Satipatthana Sutta and you look at the Dhamma Nupassana, the four last part of the Satipatthana Sutta, it is all about understanding the five hindrances, understanding what they are, what causes them, how you give them up. Yeah, and this is how you overcome doubt, to get clarity about which qualities to practice or not. The Dhammavichaya Sambojjhanga, the awakening factor of investigation of Dhammas, same thing, yeah, understanding good and bad qualities, etc. And I think these are just two sides of the same coin, really, in the suttas. So this is a prominent part of our kind of entire approach to the spiritual path. Yeah? It's kind of fascinating. Once you start to see this, you see the links here between all the various teachings in the suttas. They're so interwoven and linked together. It's kind of fascinating here. But then I would say doubt here also refers to doubt about what teachings are good and what teachings are bad. Yeah, once you become a stream mentor, you know that the teachings of the Buddha are the real deal. Yeah, you know that the Buddha must have been enlightened, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to give these kind of teachings. And this brings you back to this idea we discussed very briefly last time of the one thing that distinguishes the Buddha's teaching from any other teaching. And this is the idea of a self. Yeah? Whereas all other teaching postulates some kind of self, permanent entity in a human being, Buddhism is the only one that doesn't do that. And for that reason, that is how you know that you have come to the Buddhist teachings when you see the Dhamma, because you know that these teachings are the only ones that actually fully match with this idea of there not being any permanent essence in a human being. So you know that the suttas, you have no doubt about the suttas anymore. You know what the good teachings are. You know the Dhamma is good. You know the Buddha is fully enlightened. Don't have any doubt about that anymore. That's why it says in the suttas that you cannot take anyone else, anyone outside of Buddhism as your teacher anymore once you are a stream enterer, because you have overcome this doubt about what are wholesome teachings and unwholesome teachings. You have seen this for yourself, and you can match it up with how the Buddha taught these things. So that is doubt, and it doesn't really concern any other aspects of doubt. It's kind of one of those things that we sometimes see people argue about whether the Buddha was omniscient, sabanyuta, and there isn't really any good reason to think so. It doesn't say that in the suttas. The commentaries do claim that, but I think that is going too far. There's obviously many things in the world which the Buddha wouldn't be interested in knowing, so why would he know them, So it seems kind of silly. So I think I will stop there. I'm not going to say too much more about these three things. Any comments about this, or anyone want to say anything about this? Everyone happy? Everyone, Sarah?
Do you think there's, I see with the three things in each group, do you think there's a causal relationship between the three, even Sakaya Ditti, doubt, and misapprehension here?
I think you could say that. I think you could say that the insight is probably the most important one. The insight into Sakaya Ditti and seeing that is false, and then doubt falls. Because of the insight, doubt falls away because you know, and because you know the adherence to the precepts also falls away because of that knowledge there. So you could say that is the critical one here. In fact, the sutta, it goes on after this, it goes on and it picks out one of the factors. I don't know if you saw that later on here, and that one factor is obviously the critical one here. So I would say that is the critical one that you have to overcome, and the other ones kind of fall by the wayside as a consequence of that critical one being abandoned. So I think that is the way to think about it. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So what is the cause? How do we overcome these three factors, fetters, that actually makes us a stream entry, and these three? And this is kind of interesting because this is a set of three that we don't normally see in the suttas at all. I think this is the only way in the suttas that you find this set of three. Maybe there is one or two other places, but this is kind of the critical place where you find this. And the three are here, improper attention, or if you like, proper attention to get rid of the other ones, following the right path, and the lack of mental sluggishness. These are the three things that you have to be able to become a stream enterer here. So this is kind of fascinating precisely because it is unusual. So this is a possibility to kind of expand our understanding a little bit of the Dhamma when you see something unusual. So let's start with following the wrong path or following the right path if you want to overcome this. Kumagga sevana is the Pali word. And so what exactly does that mean? And what it means, remember the Magga in Buddhism is always the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the Magga. So if it is the wrong path, it means that don't have all the 8 factors of the path. It is only when you have all 8 that you have the Eightfold Path. Anything less than that actually is the wrong path because it cannot lead you to the goal. This is kind of the point. So Kumagga here, of course, if you don't have any of the 8 factors, it's really, really off, then you really dodgy a path. But even if you're missing one, it is the Kumagga. So this here, especially at this point on the path, when we're talking about the very end of the path, seeing things according to reality, all 8 factors are required. So, and of course, those 8 factors, they culminate in Samma Samadhi, yeah, in the jhana states, in right Samadhi. So, and Samma Samadhi includes the other 7 factors within it. So because of that, you can say here that the wrong path is not having Samma Samadhi, not having the jhanas, whereas the right path is having a jhana state, yeah, the Samma Samadhi. That is what here is meant by the right path. And so that is kind of interesting, because what that means then, if you look at it that way, it means that here, and this is why I put this particular item next to Samma Samadhi on the Noble Eightfold Path. You may have wondered why I did that. This is the reason, because Samma Samadhi is implied in this particular way of formulating things. Yeah? Samma Samadhi is part of this. Without that, you are still on the wrong path. And so that is there are a few nice places in the sutras where they talk about the kumagga. And there's a memorable event in the Majjhima Nikaya 26, the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, where one of these Ajivaka ascetics, he meets the Buddha soon after his enlightenment, and he kind of shakes his head and says, yeah, this person, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he kind of walks off. And where does he walk off? He walks off on the kumagga, the wrong path. Yeah? As a kind of nice metaphor for, obviously not, he walks away from the Buddha, is also taking the wrong path at the same time in terms of spiritual things. So the wrong path, yeah, you have to have Samma Samadhi. Now, one of the things that block you from achieving that Samma Samadhi is going to be mental sluggishness. Yeah, linatta cetaso, or something like that, is what you have here. Why is that singled out? This is kind of where it gets interesting, yeah? Because this is where you kind of ask yourself this why question. That's where you have an opportunity to kind of go deeper into what is going on. Why is that singled out? Why don't we find the 5 hindrances here? Why don't we find desire? Why don't we find restlessness? What's going on? What about doubt? Because doubt was before, probably because that's out of the way, or dealt with doubt. So what about mental sluggishness? And mental sluggishness, this linattang, cetaso linattang, is basically, it is a synonym in the suttas for tinna midda, yeah, the 3rd hindrance of the 5 hindrances. Tinna midda being the tiredness of the mind, or the what is the right word? The kind of the sluggishness that is already here. So the tiredness and the whatever. Usually called sloth and torpor. I don't really like sloth and torpor. It's too kind of ancient way of talking about things. But tiredness and lethargy maybe, something like that. So it is similar to that. Yeah, this is kind of one of the. So this is what we really are dealing with here when we talk about sluggishness. So what does that mean? Well, what it means in practice, in terms of your experience in meditation, for example, is that the mind has not got the full power yet. It's not fully bright yet. That's really what it means. And actually, so mental sluggishness here doesn't necessarily mean that you are kind of sluggish or anything like that and kind of falling asleep. It doesn't really mean that at all. It means that the mind has not yet attained the full brightness and power that will enable you to attain Samma Samadhi. The mind can actually be really, really bright and still have a tiny degree of sluggishness left there. And this is why you find, if you read the Anapanasati Sutta, yeah, and you find that some of the very last things that you have to do in Anapanasati, in mindfulness of breathing, before you attain the jhana state. The jhana state there is called vimochayang chittang in the Pali, freeing the mind. Yeah, that's step number 12 in the Anapanasati Sutta. Yeah, the step before that is samadhahang chittang. Yeah, concentrate or stilling the mind, and the one before that is abhipamodayang chittang, something like that. I think it's abhipamodayang chittang, and that means gladdening the mind. And that gladdening of the mind is what exactly it counteracts the sluggishness at this particular point. Yes, you can see it's very, very late in the Anapanasati Sutta. This is step number 9, 12, 10, yeah, 10. Step number 10 in the Anapanasati. This is where you already have bright nimittas coming up, yeah, and already things are really happening here. And you brighten up these nimittas, the way Ajahn Brahmali always talks about this. That is the overcoming of the sluggishness, making the mind more bright. So this is at the very, very end of the path. So this is, again, you have to be very careful with interpretation here. Sluggishness is not the way we normally talk about it. It is a very profound aspect of the path, where the mind has a little bit of not super brightness. That's what it means, a lack of super brightness. That's really what sluggishness means here. But you can't really translate that way, because that's not what the Pali means. Yeah? When the Buddha talks about sluggish, one of the very important lessons from this is that when the Buddha talks, he talks about things in a very, very elevated way. When the Buddha says you are happy, he doesn't mean, yeah, you're happy. He means really, really happy. When the Buddha says you're not sluggish, it means really, really not sluggish. Yeah? It's kind of power, it's kind of, everything is multiplied to 1,000-fold with the Buddha. He always uses terminology in a very kind of understated way. And it is a very important thing to understand when you read the suttas, otherwise you get it completely wrong what is going on here. So this is what sluggishness means here. So, but why sluggishness then? That's still, the question is still there. I just said that abhipamodayang chittang means to brighten the mind, and then afterwards comes samadahang chittang, which means to still the mind. So why isn't the stilling the mind mentioned here? Yeah, stilling the mind is the opposite of restlessness. So why isn't restlessness, overcoming restlessness, mentioned here? And I think there isn't, I don't know why that is the case. I don't really have any theory about that. I think these are just various defilements of the mind, and sometimes we have to focus on one. When we come to the next factor which leads to these, we find restlessness in there, or we find actually distraction, I think. So, distraction, thank you, you're ahead of me. So, so these are just, you can put these things together in different ways. In the Anapanasati, it seems to be the other way around. Yeah? First of all, you overcome sluggishness, then you still the mind. Here is the opposite. So these are just very refined defilements, and you kind of overcome them as a group, in a sense. Yeah? It is not entirely, I don't think you can fully separate them out. But what is interesting about this, and what I think is important, is that the further on you go in meditation, the more it talks about these very refined defilements. It doesn't really talk about desire anymore at this point. It doesn't talk about ill will anymore at this point, because these are very coarse defilements. And when you look at the suttas, you look at the gradual training, you look at how it is always laid out. You start off with your sila, which includes the sense restraint, and that is really where you overcome ill will and desire, with sense restraint. It is early on. There's no mention of tiredness there. There's no mention of restlessness there. It just talks about those two main hindrances, the two first ones of the 5 hindrances. And that is the way it goes. The same thing with sampajanya, which here was called situational awareness, is a similar kind of problem. It is basically referring to desire and ill will. And only then do we come to the 5 hindrances. And so the 5 hindrances are really very refined aspects of the mind. There's still a tiny aspect there of desire and these kind of things, but it's the very last thing that you have to overcome to be able to attain the jhanas. And that is where sluggishness of the mind, restlessness, these things come into their own. Before that, we really need to talk about desire and ill will. And this is a very important point. And the reason why it is so important is because very often people ask the question, how do I overcome tiredness? How do I overcome restlessness in my meditation? I'm thinking about things all the time, and then I stop thinking and I get tired. I sort of oscillate between thinking and tiredness. I have to do one or the other. I can't find the kind of middle way here. So how do I overcome tiredness? And the answer is, don't worry about the tiredness. What you need to overcome usually is the more deep-rooted desires and attachments and ill will. That is usually what causes the tiredness and the restlessness. Unless your meditation is going really well. If your meditation is going well and you're watching the breath and you're kind of enjoying what you're doing, that is where you start to be concerned specifically with restlessness and tiredness, because that is where those things kind of come into their own, more or less divorced from these other more coarser defilements. So ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What are my attachments? What are my desires that I haven't uncovered yet? Do I still have some ill will? And this is kind of we have to be very honest with ourselves on this Buddhist path. It doesn't kind of help to pretend that you are more pure than you actually are. And if you do that, then it's not going to work out, because you're not going to go anywhere. Other people might think, "Wow, look at them," but inside you're still as rotten as before. It doesn't really, that's not the point. You want to the whole point is to make progress for yourself. Otherwise, it doesn't kind of work out. And I must admit, I look at my own practice over the years, and sometimes you think, yeah, okay, I haven't got that much ill will anymore, and then it kind of tends to come back with a vengeance, and things come back in a bad way, and you realize that actually you have to be very careful to come to these kind of conclusions, and you have to be really brutally honest with yourself to see what is going on, to understand, and then deal with that problem in a very specific and structured way, and I kind of really do. Okay, who are the people that I find problematic? How can I look at them different and really understand that, to deal with the specific issues, rather than just carrying on and kind of walking around and kind of watching a bit of breath and doing. You have to be very clear about what the problems are. Only then are you going to kind of be able to deal with these issues. And I have found in my own life that having more compassion, more metta, reducing and looking at my friends in the spiritual life, everyone really, in a different way, it's been one of the most important things, even now, after 25 years. I should maybe look down when I say that, and kind of but it's true, these things are very deep-seated, and I have far less ill will now than I used to have. Fortunately, it's heading the right way, but there's still kind of plenty enough to deal with there, and so this is so important, because these are the root defilements that cause everything else and make it really problematic. So remember this, because these, I think, some of the very important things that come out of the suttas. So you follow the right path, follow the right path. Through that, you overcome the sluggishness, and then it issues in samma samadhi. You gain the jhanas because you overcome the defilements in this way. And then, when you really overcome those defilements, that is when the proper attention, the yoniso manasikara, has the ability to really start to kick in. Before I go on, does anyone want to, please feel free to kind of say anything at any point, because I'm talking a lot. Fast as usual, just firing away. No compassion for anyone, just...
Ajahn, can I repeat the trauma question, just to try it from a different angle? So, during COVID, we've had more people ring up.
Yeah.
Or we've had more people come saying, traumatized by this or that. If we were trying to fit it into this model, would we say a senior monastic or a caring professional would not need to help the person with the trauma understand whether they were hanging on to desire for a different world or hatred towards a certain event?
Yeah. You can. I mean, the thing is that these kind of sequences are really for people who are already committed to the Buddhist path, really, that's what they're really for, and are there too. But the very beginning of the sequence, you can probably use some of the factors in there. And one of the critical things there is listening to the teachings of the Buddha, So that is kind of the entry point to this kind of problem, listening to those teachings. So I think you can. I mean, you can use these teachings in the sense of, pointing out to them that maybe they're holding on to things, or maybe that it's a different way of looking at that trauma. There's a different approach to that. I mean, very often the trauma is because you get stuck into a particular way of looking at something. But maybe there's a different angle there. Someone has abused you. Okay, so someone has abused you, which is terrible, and we shouldn't have that. But if it does happen, how do you deal with that? And of course, the answer is to understand the other person hasn't got a clue what they're doing here. They are completely, they have no idea. If they understood, they would never do those kind of things. And they're hurting themselves more than hurting you, and all of this. That doesn't take away the trauma, but it kind of makes it more understandable. Makes it more understandable that the other person is, kind of, they are trapped in their own trauma, in a sense, in their own problems. They don't know what they're doing. And this is kind of the terrible thing about the samsara, isn't it? We're all kind of trapped in our own little traumas in a certain way, trying to kind of help each other out and kind of move forward, and all a bit stuck in the mud. So you can use those kind of principles, but I think in general, when someone is in that kind of condition, and very often what they need is some, professional services. We can do what we can, but I would always recommend people to find a proper counselor and those kind of things. Richard?
I think in the case of trauma, of course there is this issue about passion for the perpetrator, but also there's a lot about understanding perhaps our deluded view about what's happened and how therefore we react. A lot of the problem actually of sorting out trauma is really understanding one's own misreactions. And that's not connected with the compassion for the perpetrator, it's connected with compassion for one's own failure to learn at the time, or wrong learning at the time.
Yeah. So kind of re-evaluating the situation in a sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's
By evaluating it incorrectly at the time, you then set up a blaming situation, a self-hate situation.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that's very true. I think, when I think back on myself and my own kind of life, and sometimes things seem very bad at a certain point, and then after a while you think about them again, it don't seem so bad anymore, and the whole thing changes, and then you can kind of let go of it, and it kind of disappears. It's actually very true. Things that you may have kind of bothered you for years, suddenly one day, bang, it's gone, and it's just because you have a shift in your in perspective, in a sense. Yeah. So I think that's I think that's a good point. Venerable.
Have you got any sort of thoughts or experiences about how you can be brutally honest with yourself, as you say, about what your attachments are or your wills and desires, without focusing too much on your faults and becoming negative about it?
Sure. I think it's very important to have compassion for yourself. Yeah, this is one of the most important things, and just to understand it isn't really your fault. Yeah, you have kind of come through this samsaric existence. You had all kind of conditionings on you. It's not about you. Yeah, it's about all this conditioning. It's about this kind of we come into this world in a certain way. You have no idea what happened in past lives, and so you, after a while, you kind of get it kind of almost like a distance to yourself. Yeah, these things are there. It's not my fault. So I just kind of deal with it, and it becomes more acceptable to have these problems. I think it's very nice when you can do that, because it means you also become more compassionate of other people. Yeah, you see other people in exactly the same way. And I think the way we treat ourselves, that's how we treat others. The way we treat others is how we treat ourselves. So having compassion for others, and really anyone really in the whole world, and understanding that they also are the victims of their own defilements, the victims of their own past life, the victims. If there is no self, we're all victims at the end of the day. Yeah, everything is just conditioning. So how can you blame anyone for anything? And then you start to gradually, it still is hard because the sense of self is still there. It's still hard to do that, but it makes it easier. And you have compassion for yourself. You think, I'm a victim of these blooming defilements, It's not the other way around. I'm not in charge. I'm the victim of them. That kind of puts you in a very, very different situation. It's not as if anyone else is responsible either. No one is really responsible. That's the weird thing. It's there's this wheel of samsara, this wheel of defilements that rolls on in this inexplicable way, condition upon condition. It's nobody's fault, it's just the way it is. And the way it is pretty bad. And then you can become more accepting of yourself as a consequence. But it is it's an ongoing thing. Something like that. I mean, you find your own way ultimately, but Okay, so improper attention. Proper attention is the last one here. This is yoniso manasikara. So once the path, then you have all the factors are in place, you've overcome all the 5 hindrances. Remember that without overcoming them, you cannot see things. This is one of the things you find in the sutras. You have to overcome them fully. So the mind has to be super bright, super clear, super still. Then you can do this. Then you are ready for the wise attention, the proper attention, the yoniso manasikara. So what does it mean? How do we have yoniso manasikara so we can actually become stream enters? And of course here it relates directly to what we looked at before, the idea of identity view. What does it mean to have yoniso manasikara so we can abandon identity view? We can give up that whole sense of self in relation to the 5 khandhas. And what it means is one of the things, as I mentioned before, this is a gradual thing, And one of the things that happens on the path of meditation is that you abandon more and more stuff. There's less and less things going on in your mind. Every time you have a successful meditation, it becomes peaceful or whatever. There is less stuff going on. So there is this gradual abandoning of the 5 khandhas. Yes, less stuff going on means the 5 khandhas are diminished. That's really what it means. So you gradually overcome the 5 khandhas, and every time you're overcoming the 5 khandhas, every time you are abandoning something, that is yoniso manasikara. So yoniso manasikara is part of this whole process of meditation practice, gradually abandoning things, gradually letting go of the 5 khandhas, See and understanding them in the right way, understanding that they are problematic, understanding that there's a higher happiness to be had. These are the kind of things that are aspects of yoniso manasikara that allows you to go deeper in meditation, Stage by stage. Or it can be a focus on the defilements, overcoming the defilements, another way of looking at yoniso manasikara in this context, either focusing on understanding, right here and right now, giving up something because you understand it's not really satisfactory, or it can, which is also working with the defilements really, because you're overcoming desire, or it can maybe be looking at the defilements more directly. So this is how you use this proper attention, gradually overcoming these 5 khandhas, and the understanding of the 5 khandhas. The way that is measured in the suttas, the overcoming of them is measured by, the understanding of them is measured by how they are overcome, the degree to which they're overcome. So wisdom in Buddhism is defined by how much you have let go of. Parinya is one of these kind of famous words in the suttas, which means like full comprehension of something. It is defined by the fact that you have given up all attachment to everything. That's how it is defined. So it is how much you've given up that defines your wisdom. So wisdom can be measured in a very specific way, according to the sutta. So the more you have given up of the 5 khandhas in your meditation, the wiser you are, at least at that point. You may lose again afterward, but at that point you have that wisdom and understanding. And so this shows you that there's a very clear way of thinking about wisdom in Buddhism. And when you become a stream enter, that's when you become the highest wisdom, because you give up all the 5 khandhas in the sense of having no more attachment to them. So this is how you know proper attention, improper attention, wisdom from non-wisdom, is by the degree to which you have given something up. It's a very specific way of thinking about it. So then as your process of meditation moves on, there's less and less happening. Well, it means that there is less and less of the 5 khandhas. And this is kind of the point of this path. The less there is of the 5 khandhas, the less content you are dealing with. The less easy it is to understand what remains. So this is a very important part of the meditation. The less there remains, the easier it is to understand that which is there, because it's very obvious what actually is there. The more scattered the mind is, the more things going on, well, you haven't really got a chance to get a grasp on it, because it is so all over the place. So the 5 khandhas are kind of merging into this very narrow field, and this is what you find, for example, that's why the jhanas are one of the reasons why they are so powerful, because all that is left in those states, if you read the definitions of these things in the suttas, all that's left really is bliss. So all you have to do is focus on that bliss. This is what remains of the 5 khandhas, everything else of the five khandhas has already been let go of. You have already understood that in a certain sense because you have let go of it. Now you have to let go of the very last thing, which is that very narrow thing, the bliss and the perception that goes with that bliss in the jhana states. So, very easy to focus. You know what you have to focus on. On top of that, you have a super powerful mind which has the ability to do this, which doesn't get frightened or whatever, yeah? And that is then where you place your attention at that point. That last thing that remains is the final yoniso manasikara that allows you to make that leap and then abandon Sakkaya Ditthi, identity view. That's all you have left to focus on. So that is the yoniso manasikara. Yeah? You look at that state of mind either just before jhana or more likely after jhana. I think I should really say after jhana. You focus on that, you understand that that too is problematic, that too is impermanent, that's what you see, and then you become a stream mentor as a consequence.
Ajahn, can I just ask a question there?
Please, yeah.
In terms of proper attention to the five khandhas,
Yeah.
could you take viraga? Is that viraga coming there?
It can be, yeah. So, so if you have the right attention to the five khandhas, then you will tend to reject them. Yeah, viraga is the fading away, basically. So viraga has two meanings in the suttas. It depends on what you mean by it. But one of the main meanings is the idea of fading away. And that's exactly what's happening in meditation practice. Everything is fading away. Yeah? If things are fading away, you know you're on the right track. My thinking is fading away. My body is fading away. Things are just gradually fading away. That is viraga. And that's what you see in the Anapanasati Sutta. You know, after you have vimochang chittang, which is freeing the mind, then you have aniccanupassi, then you have viraganupassi, nirodhanupassi, patinissaganupassi, the four last elements of the Satipatthana Anapanasati Sutta. Second one of those is viraganupassi. You see the fading away. And what you see is precisely this. In your meditation, you see things fading away. Yeah, things becoming less and less.
Ajahn, what does it mean by viraga as a jnana?
Sorry?
Viraga as a jnana?
Well, viraga is also used in the sense of, you know, the end of the path, viraga. And then it means that it's like abandoning all desire. All desire is gone, so you don't have any tanha anymore. Raga and tanha are synonyms in the suttas. So raga and tanha mean basically the same thing. So viraga is the giving up of raga, giving up the craving and desire. So that's like becoming an arahant, basically. Yeah. Okay, so what time is it? Does anyone know what time it is? I haven't got it.
8:23.
Is that all? Okay, good. We can just keep on going then. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Not midnight yet. Okay. So yeah. So anything else on this?
And in your experience, do you find that people quibble about renunciation? You know, they see it as a big wall that they don't want to go through, and therefore you could say to them that Yoniso Manasikara is actually hidden in renunciation. That's what helps you kind of get there. I guess you couldn't replace it as a term, but that might help people at the beginning of the path saying, break down where your attachments are, look at greed, you know, is it related to a football team or a past relationship or a piece of cake, and then ask yourself how big that greed is and whether you can put it down.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it. Yeah, Yoniso Manasikara and renunciation, they go together, and I think people generally don't understand the idea of renunciation in the world. They don't understand what it is or how it works, or what it is about, and I think that's a big part of the problem. Yeah, you cannot. This is one of the things, you cannot attain a jhana without renouncing very, very deeply, and this is kind of what's going on here. So so absolutely, so that goes together with Yoniso Manasikara. Okay, so let's carry on. Are you up for more? Or are you already no? Yeah, up for more? Yes, okay, one vote, okay, good. 2 votes, okay, yeah. if you, yeah. So anyway, I will just carry on a little bit because I sort of said I was going to come to the end of the sutta. Maybe I'm not sure if we can, but see what happens. So now the question is, what is the cause of these three, of improper attention, or how do you get proper attention, how do you follow the right path, and how do you avoid mental sluggishness? What are the causes? And it is these three here. So you will have to be mindful, you have to have situational awareness, and you have to have a non-distracted mind. These are the things that are required for you to have proper attention, following the right path, and overcoming sluggishness. And here, I think it's fairly obvious that unmindfulness, this is called mutta sati, usually in the suttas, and it can also be translated as absent-mindedness, for example, or confused, mental confusion and that kind of thing. Your mind is not really in the present moment properly. And this here basically just means that you are not ready for meditation. The opposite here would be mindfulness, sati, which basically always refer to the satipatthana or the meditation practice in the suttas. When you see the word sati used on its own like this, it almost always refers to meditation practice. And in particular, anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing, or any aspect of satipatthana, this is what is going on here. And this is why this particular factor here fits in with the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. So here we have sammasati leading to sammasamadhi, which is the one afterwards, the following the right path, and then that leading to the other factors, which are all about sammajnana, right knowledge, and sammavimutti, the right liberation at the end, which are the tenfold path. So you can see here how it follows very beautifully with the idea of the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Noble Tenfold Path, with some additional things added to this. So this is satipatthana. And this is kind of one of these very important things that you see in the suttas again and again, how satipatthana is the cause for sammasamadhi, how sammasati leads to sammasamadhi. You watch the breath, that leads to the jhanas. That's really what it means. And again in the suttas, you see this kind of connection. And so what that means, of course, is that this whole idea that satipatthana is all about vipassana and insight is actually very misleading. It is the fundamental purpose of satipatthana is to lead to samadhi. It may include vipassana, because vipassana also leads to samadhi if it's done in the right way, but it's not fundamentally about vipassana. It is fundamentally about getting you to samadhi. And this is what you find everywhere in the sutras. You find that on the Noble Eightfold Path, samma sati leading to samma samadhi. This is a causal sequence. You find it in the 5 spiritual faculties. Sat indriya leading to samad indriya, the faculty of mindfulness leading to the faculty of samadhi. You find it in the bojjhangas, the 7 bojjhangas, where you have the sati sambojjhanga at the beginning, leading stage by stage to the samadhi sambojjhanga, which is number 6 of the 7 bojjhangas, the factors of awakening. So it's through and through the suttas, everywhere, this particular structure. And so it is fundamental to kind of to know that and to understand that what these things really are about and how they are used in the right way. It should always lead to samadhi. That is when satipatthana is useful. It should not lead to some kind of amorphous vipassana, which is very hard to pin down. It should lead to samadhi. Then you know you are on the right track. These are such fundamental things, and yet I think not always understood in the Buddhist world. And with that meditation comes the situational awareness. And as I mentioned before, situational awareness is of 2 types. One is the ordinary situational awareness that we have in ordinary life. Sampajanya is the Pali word here. Sometimes translated as clear comprehension or full awareness. Bhante Sujato prefers situational awareness, and the reason is because it means that you are aware of what is appropriate in any situation. When you go to eat, you eat with a degree of mindfulness. You can see sometimes you have too much food in your bowl. I must admit it happens to me also. Sometimes it's really hard, and that's probably not enough situational awareness right there. You're thinking, I need more, right? But you are much more hungry when you think about it than when you actually are. When it comes to the actual eating, it's kind of problematic. So it's about this kind of thing, this ability to know the right amount, the things that don't lead to desire and ill will. So you don't put yourself in a situation that leads to problems. This is very much a very important part of situational awareness. You use the things that we have in the right way. You use the internet skillfully. You use all of these things in a way which doesn't lead you to serious problems. So this is the initial way of situational awareness. But the more profound way is what we see here, because here it is together with satipatthana, is part of the meditation practice. So here it means that you are watching the breath, and you are aware of what you're doing. You know that you're heading in the right direction. You are fulfilling the purpose of watching the breath. This is kind of the situational awareness of purpose, one of the 4 aspects of situational awareness. The purpose is being fulfilled. You're heading in the right direction. You're staying with the meditation object. One of the 4 sampajanyas, as it is described, 4 aspects as described in the commentaries, is gochara sampajanya. And gochara is the field. Gochara literally means the place where the cows go. It's the grazing, the field. So the grazing of the mind when you meditate is the breath. So you stay with the breath, you stay with the meditation object. That's the gochara sampajanya. And the other one is an even deeper aspect, which is the non-delusion sampajanya, which is basically the idea that you are able to let go as you keep on going, because you're not deluded that there is a self there, which you then hold on to. You see everything as impermanent. It allows you to move deeper into the thing. So this is the situational awareness as part of the meditation practice. It's how many of these factors are there depends on the depth of your situational awareness. But this is always an important part of it, sampajanya. And then the last one here is the distracted mind. This is the vikitta chitta or vikepa chitta. Vikitta chitta, I think it is here. Or chitta, so vikitta or vikepa, something like that. And this is, in the suttas, this word is used as almost like the definition of not having samadhi. It is the distracted mind, is the mind which is not in samadhi. So this is what the meaning of this. So you can see here we are meditating, moving towards samadhi. This is kind of the whole purpose of this. And for that reason, you have to overcome the distracted mind, because that is exactly what is opposed to samadhi on the path. And in this case here, it means not a very distracted mind. This is only small distractions, things that lead you away from the breath or don't allow you to stay with whatever is happening in your meditation practice. It's a very kind of small kind of distractions. So we're again dealing with the very refined defilements that come at the very end of the path. That's what we're dealing with here. So you stay with samadhi. You stay with the object. And to do that, here, Ajahn Brahmali talking about this, he often talks about kind of the idea of focusing on the beauty of the meditation object, so you stay with that because you are attracted to it, these kind of things. This is what overcomes distraction at this particular point. You have to, this is one of the reasons why experiencing joy, piti, and sukha in meditation is so important, because this is what allows you not to be distracted, because you have something which is interesting to the mind. This is why these things are so fundamental parts of the meditation practice. And there are many people who meditate without joy and bliss. And of course, it can still be enjoyable. It can still be peaceful. It can have many benefits still. But it will not lead to that really profound aspects that we are looking at here, because it's not strong enough to draw the mind in and really make it fully stilled in samadhi. You cannot really do that without the bliss. So always, every sequence that shows how meditation works in the suttas includes piti and sukha. It's always part of the meditation sequence. So the distracted mind. So anything which mind is not distracted is a kind of samadhi. So you could argue that if you are there's a degree of samadhi there if you are even focusing on the sutta, listening to that with a one-pointed mind. Sometimes the suttas use this idea as well of one-pointed to a sutta, or one-pointed in listening and this kind of thing. Sometimes we see that as well, because your mind is not distracted from the thing that you are doing. There is a certain, it's not really called samadhi yet, but there's a certain one-pointedness there because your mind is focused on what you're doing. But it's not samadhi because the mind is obviously still moving because you are following something which is itself moving. So that is the mindfulness, clear comprehension, and the distracted mind. Anyone disagree with this? No, I love it. Okay, you don't disagree? Okay, good. Yeah.
Just one question about that. With some of the the refrains in the Satipatthana Sutta, some of those insights actually could actually reduce some of the defilements, especially desire. That's what I feel. If you see a rising, a little bit of a rising and passing away,
sure,
then that can, I think, reinforce the samadhi.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that it's nothing to do with vipassana. What I'm saying is that the vipassana can be useful, but only insofar as it leads to samadhi. Because if it doesn't lead to samadhi, then it's a bit dodgy, because that's the whole purpose of this practice. So I'm not saying it is not about vipassana, but I'm saying that this emphasis that satipatthana is all about vipassana, that is where you go wrong. You use it as a sub-aspect of this. Okay. So let's now look at the causes for mindfulness, clear comprehension or situational awareness, and the undistracted mind, the other mind which is kind of samadhi. What are the causes? And what's happening here? Jeepers. Okay, so this is the original sequence in that sutta, and that's the sequence I have said bad things about, so I can't really show you that sequence. So this I want to take this further down. So this is the way it actually is found in the Pali, but I want to take it 2 items down, right? Like I showed you in the beginning. So let's do that because so this is the new sequence that we are looking at now. So these are the things that are the causes then for overcoming the other ones. You want to overcome restlessness, you want to overcome lack of restraint, and you want to overcome unethical conduct. So so this here is quite obvious what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with actually very broad spectrum of factors on the Noble Eightfold Path. Lack of restraint is very closely related to samma vayama, right effort, because this is the restraint of the senses, often defined as that. Unethical conduct, it really is almost all the factors of ethics in the Noble Eightfold Path. Samma vacha, samma kammanta, samma ajiva. So all of this is kind of packed into this right here. And perhaps the critical factor here is really lack of restraint. Because what that refers to is this idea of sense restraint that you find in the suttas, and always defined in a very beautiful way in the suttas. I'm not going to go into it in detail now, but it really deserves a few hours of discussion because it's very beautiful, and it is explained in a number of suttas in very nice ways how this actually works. But the main idea of the sense restraint is simply that you have enough mindfulness. You already need a degree of mindfulness here. So mindfulness is everywhere, it's just different degrees. Enough mindfulness to know how the world is affecting you. You can see how the world is affecting you. Is it giving rise to ill will, aversion? Is it giving rise to strong desires? And then once you have enough mindfulness to see that, then you have a kind of a repertoire of techniques, of ways of thinking that guide you away from that course that your mind is set on. You don't fall into that trap again. So I'm about to get angry. Wait, stop, hold on, I can see it happening. Why is that? What is this happening? Well, I'm looking at this person this way. What is another way? And you already have this kind of pre-programmed into you, so it happens very fast. And you kind of think about another way of looking at that person. You let go. You don't allow the ill will to come up. That is basically how the restraint happens. through wisdom. Yeah, one of the important points here is to use wisdom as much as possible. I always like the way Ajahn Brahmali talks about sammapadana or samavayama, because he always says you shouldn't really use willpower. Ajahn Brahmali is very anti-willpower. And so then what is the alternative? Well, the alternative is to use wisdom, yeah? Because wisdom is a little bit of will, because you have to turn your mind towards the wisdom, but it's much less will than kind of trying to suppress things or hold things in the mind. Instead, you use a wisdom which overcomes things in a much more powerful way. So this is the idea of sense restraint, yeah? And if you haven't got that sense restraint, what it means is that your mind is always being buffeted around. Yeah, you're seeing something, you're hearing something. This is how it is for most people in the world. Your mind is always drawn to things, or it has aversion to things, and there is no peace. Yeah, and it leaves an echo in the mind. The echo is always there. You're thinking about things that happened 5 minutes ago. Oh, I saw that cake in the shop. Jeepers, I really could do with some food, and it looked really delicious. And things are sticky in the mind. Yeah. And this is, or you see someone you don't like, and you think about them half an hour later. You think, gee, that's terrible, right? To think about, kind of really, and this is the problem with sense restraint, or lack of sense restraint, that you're not able to stay in the present moment. You're always tortured, drawn back into the past, and you kind of keep these things sticking in the mind. And this is exactly what it says. How does it say again now in that sutta? You are not. Abhijja domanasang. I can't remember the wording now. Getting old. I used to remember these kind of things, but gradually succumbing to old age. So this is it. Yeah. Anyway, it's something. Basically, the idea is that you don't get stuck on these things anymore. Yeah. And of course, if you are stuck on them, that is when the mind is restless, because the mind is thinking about these things. The mind is moving towards them. So restlessness here is very closely related to the lack of restraint. The mind is always moving around. So here, restlessness is a more coarse form of restlessness than the distracted mind. Yeah? First, you have to overcome the coarser aspect of the defilements, the coarse restlessness, and then you can move on to the more refined restlessness, the distracted mind. Another very important point of general Dhamma is to have to know what are the most serious of your defilements. What are the coarsest ones? Deal with those first. Don't try to deal with the refined stuff first, because no way it's going to work. You have to understand the kind of the big issues, then you deal with those, then you move on to the refined issues. And this is again, a thing which is very often forgotten in the world. Very common for people to kind of be taken, coming off the street, going straight into a meditation center. Okay, sit down, watch your breath, yeah? It doesn't work. It's impossible. It cannot be done that way. It's completely the wrong way of thinking about things. This is not what you find in the suttas. You don't just sit down and watch your breath straight away. You have to make sure your mind is ready. You have to make sure you have practiced the other things first. What is your mental state right now? Deal with that first, then come back to watch the breath. A lot of people are not ready to watch the breath at all. Yeah, they find it terrible to watch the breath. It's the worst thing they've ever done is to watch the breath. That's the last thing they want to do in their life is to watch the breath. It's just awful. People have traumatic experience, got trauma from watching the breath, let alone other things. And it's true, right? Because they're not ready. If you are sat down on the floor, sit for 1.5 hours, then you get 15 minutes to walk, and another 1.5 hours, and you carry on with that. And if you're not ready, it's going to be very traumatic. And that is why they say 90% of people don't come back on some of these meditation retreats, because they're just they haven't got the right structure. They're not really built on how the suttas work. So this is another very important point of Dhamma, this idea that we need to get things in the right sequence. You have to understand what is your main problem, and then deal with that first of all. Like, for example, with ill will, there are certain people that you're going to find more difficult than others. Like, you're probably soon pretty fed up with me if I carry on much longer. But so then you have to have metta for me, right? I'm going to test you now. See how no. So the idea is, who are the biggest problems? Deal with those, yeah? And then you are actually overcoming these things in the right way, if you, when you do that. So restlessness, yeah, and then you have the idea here of unethical conduct. And the reason why this is dusila here, it has many ways, and you may wonder what that is doing here. And really the reason it is here is because lack of restraint and ethical conduct are very closely related to each other. If you want to have a full ethical conduct, it has to include restraint. That's why they here come together. And you find that in other places that the three kinds of ethical conduct, the tini sucharitani, sucharita, chara is conduct, su, good conduct, tini, three kinds of good conduct. They are mind, body, and speech. So they come together, and that's why it is here. So here is all lumped together into the three kinds of good conduct, if you wish: mind, body, and speech into one. And it is the mental one which kind of is the one which signifies that all three have kind of come together. I'm not going to talk too much about this. This is really worthy of a lot of talking, but not now, because another time, because I want to carry on a little bit. I got the time on his screen, and now I can see it. So, okay, good. So, any comments on this? If you feel you had enough, you're very welcome to leave at any time. I will, of course, write your name down because in the bad book. But no, please feel free to go or to use a toilet if you need, or whatever it is. Please, at any time, of course. Okay, so let's carry on. So, what is then the cause here of these three bad qualities? And now we come to another very interesting set that is not very commonly seen elsewhere. And it is these three here: faithlessness, uncharitableness, and laziness, or the positive side, having faith, being charitable, and being energetic or putting forth effort. These are the opposites. And now we're coming to kind of close to the root of this sequence. And the critical factor of these three is the idea of faith. Faith arises, of course, when we talk about faith in Buddhism, we're talking about faith in the Buddhist teachings, obviously, nothing else. So prior to this, then, you find hearing the right teachings, and then comes the faith arising from that. What exactly is faith? And this is very interesting, because it is not obvious that faith is the right translation here. It could very easily translate as confidence. And the point in Buddhism, and I mentioned this many times before, but it's nice to repeat oneself. And the point about faith is that it has two specific qualities. One is the confidence idea of faith, that you see the thing and think, this is really good stuff. This is really powerful things. I really want to apply myself to this. I want to be a Buddhist. I want to become a monastic, for goodness sake. I want to ordain with Ajahn Brahmali as my teacher. Please, may I shave off my head in your presence? No, not your head, your hair. I just said head there. I was going a bit too far when you shave off your head. But anyway, just stick with the hair here. So it is this feeling that you have found something very powerful. It's a confidence that arises in you that these teachings are really something unique in the world. And they are. I mean, when you start to compare spiritual teachings, there is nothing like the Buddhist teachings out there. So it's really as simple as that. There are other spiritual teachings. Some of them are interesting sometimes, but Buddhism is really quite unique in its profundity and its details, in its integrity, in how it all holds together. It's just really special. So this is the number one thing, and it kind of makes sense usually about how the way we do things. And from that sense of confidence, from the feeling that you have found something very special, and also by seeing the conduct of the teachers, you see the Buddha, you see kind of inspiring teachers like Ajahn Brahmali or whatever, from that can also then arise the joy. And that is the faith aspect of faith, the feeling, feeling tone that comes with that confidence when you actually feel inspired. And this is why we have these ideas of Buddhanusati and Dhammanusati and Sanghanusati. These are the aspects of faith that give rise to the positive feeling. So there is this dual aspect of faith. There is the understanding aspect of the teaching, knowing that you found something special, and then there is the emotional response to that sense of conviction that you have found something very, very beautiful. And both of those are important aspects of faith. That's why it is hard to know whether you should call it confidence or faith. It is not faith in the Christian sense at all, or partly it is, because Christianity also has the idea of, being joyful about things. But Christianity has a shortcoming in the confidence side or the understanding side of things. Buddhism has both of those aspects, and they're both important. And of course, once you have that sense of faith, you know that you have found something very powerful, something very beautiful, then your desire to act on that arises as a consequence. You really want to overcome that ill will. You really want to be kind to others to the best of your ability. Your laziness starts to subside. This laziness you had here is no longer, you no longer want to be lazy. You want to apply yourself to these teachings. That's why you're all here. That's why you're coming to Jhana Grove for the rains, right? Welcome. Marvelous to have you here. Yeah, it's so nice to have people who are really committed on this path. And if you come here even if you only come for a short period of time, for a week or whatever, but certainly if you come for 3 months, it's wonderful. It shows that you have really started to commit to these teachings, and what a wonderful thing that is. And monastic life is the same. Yeah, sometimes you have to be careful in monastic life because you stay as a monk for a long time, and there may come a point when you start to it becomes a habit in a sense to be a monk, and you forget this kind of, the thing that originally got you there. So you have to re-establish the confidence and the faith to get out of kind of bad habits of laziness or whatever it is, to keep going. When you've been a monk for a really long time, it's kind of, some people can get into these things. Sometimes I can see that in myself sometimes, and it's not very pleasant to see that when you kind of fall into bad habits and things. But perhaps the most interesting one here, which also comes with the idea of faith, is the idea that you become charitable. Yeah, when you have faith, when you have confidence, that's kind of fascinating. The idea of charitable here, the Pali word, is a very unusual word called avadanyuta, and it's only found in this particular sutta, not found anywhere else in the suttas. It is found in some Abhidhamma text and a few other places, but it's really only found here. So it's hard to know exactly what it means, but it's always glossed or explained as not being miserly, not being stingy. Yeah? In other words, being generous. That's why he used the word charitable here. Basically, it means like generous. You are giving of yourself. Yeah, that's what it means. So this brings into the path here the idea of being charitable and being generous. And that is not a quality that we often see in these structured sequences. Usually we see virtue, we see all this kind of thing, but generosity is often not there. But here, even the idea of generosity comes in. And it's just a reminder of the importance of generosity on the Buddhist path. How much it really matters, And it doesn't matter whether you are a layperson or a monastic. The idea of being generous and being freely giving is the same for both. It's just that it may take slightly different forms, but the general idea is the same. And it's interesting, you read the suttas, they talk about different kinds of stinginess and miserliness. They talk about being stingy with the Dhamma, for example. So you think, I'm going to teach my favorite disciples, they're going to get the real Dhamma. The dodgy disciples, they can only get a little bit, until they become good disciples, or something like that. It's like you're not freely giving of the Dhamma, but it should be freely giving. Why? Well, because these are teachings that are there to help everybody, to make everyone happy. Of course you should be giving this freely. The Dhamma should be freely given. There should be no teacher's fist, as you see in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, no holding back. Everything really is given out. You're charitable with the teachings. Another nice kind of stinginess you find in the suttas is the kulamacharya. Kula is families, so you are stingy with families. So you have your disciples who look after you. I'm not going to tell you who my disciples are because they look after me, and they are making sure that I get the requisites I need, and they give me nice food. If I get too many other people, then the service is not going to be the same anymore. So this is the kulamacharya. You're not like that. You share, You share if someone is generous. It's both helpful for the lay people to know who is in need of something, and it's useful for the monastic to know who has the ability to be generous, So all of these things are shared openly. And so this idea of being generous, very fundamental on the Buddhist path. The idea of always being helpful. And, And there's so many possibilities in daily life to be helpful and to help out, and to try to come from this idea of faith. One of the interesting points here is that this derives from seeing the noble ones. When you see the noble ones, when you see people who are really worthy of your respect, it often gives rise to this feeling to be kind. You want to do something here. Yeah, if I ask you, who are the people you would like to help in the world? Who are the people you would like to serve and to be kind to? Well, Ajahn Brahmali kind of stands out. Straight away, Ajahn Brahmali is something that's very easy to get up and help, yeah? Most of the time anyway. But if it is some kind of scallywag, yeah, you don't have much respect for, much more difficult to help out. So it really matters who you see and who it is, yeah? If you are inspired by somebody. This is why, one of the reasons why charitableness happens at this point, because you have been inspired by some noble conduct, by some noble person, and then the charitableness comes out of that. So if you ever want to do something kind, never hold back. Always go for it. Yeah? Never think twice about it, because that is a beautiful opportunity to do something which is absolutely fundamental to the Buddhist path. Always take the opportunity. And sometimes even go against your kind of reticence to do these things. Yes, do it anyway. Why? Because you learn a way of dealing with your mind to see things in a new way, and then go for it. And because charity is so fundamental on the Buddhist path, we see it in so many different places, and there's so many ways that we can help each other out and support each other. Take every opportunity that you ever get. And then it becomes very, very powerful. Why is that? Why is charity so important? And I think one of the reasons, really, it is part of the idea of ethics. Yeah? Ethics in Buddhism is not just about what you don't do, it's also about what you do. So charity is the opposite of stealing, really. It's about giving of yourself to others. So it is the positive side of the precept against stealing. Yeah? So, but it is very much more than that. For the other precepts, the opposite side is not where that doesn't stand out so much. But for the precept of stealing, the idea of charity stands out as something very powerful and very big. And that's why it is taken out as a special factor on the path. And also because it has a very great potential to give rise to joy and happiness when you do it in the right way. Yeah? When you do it coming from the heart, coming from a positive way. Yeah? So very powerful, yeah? And very, very useful. Yeah? And it is often easier to do than to keep all the precepts. It's easier than to keep a very strict virtue, which can be very hard sometimes. You will mess up sometimes, but being charitable often comes easier, at least, especially if you are inspired by somebody. Now, one of the other things which I remember when I was talking about this charity, talking about generosity some time ago, which I think I probably mentioned here as well. I won't mention everything before, but you can always mention them again. And that is the words that are used to describe charity or describe generosity on the Buddhist path. And the words that are used are chaga. Yeah, chaga is one of those words, which means like giving of yourself. Mutti or mutta chaga, part of the compound. Mutta also means like freeing something, yeah, releasing something for yourself. Vosagga, yes, Vosagga, yeah, is it in there? Yeah. Vosagga is there. One of the expressions in the suttas for generosity is vosaggarato, yeah? Delighting in vosagga. So we delight in you, but we also delight in the act of generosity. So vosaggarato. And vosagga is another of these profound words. And all of these words I just mentioned now, they are very close to what you find in the third noble truth. In the third noble truth, giving up of craving, what do you find? Chaga, mutti, Patinisagga. Patinisagga is very close to vosagga, basically mean the same thing here. The only thing you don't find is anālaya, the non-clinging here. So the idea of generosity is very close to the idea of the very purpose of what Buddhism is about. Buddhism ends with the giving up of craving. It ends with chaga, mutti, anālaya, and patinisagga at the very end of the path, giving up everything, yeah, including craving itself. And the giving of yourself is a very small instant of a similar kind of giving, where you give of yourself, you let go of something, yeah? You're no longer holding on to things. It's the same kind of idea on a very small scale compared to what it is at the very end of the path. That's a very beautiful way of thinking about generosity, yeah? You are training in the very purpose or what the monastic life or the spiritual life ultimately is about. The giving up of everything. The similar kind of mind state, only much, much, much more small, obviously, than the final purpose of what this path is about. So, charitableness is one of the important factors here. I'm going to carry on, I warn you. I'm just going to keep on going until the bitter end.
A quick question.
Please, yeah.
This bridge, if you just go back to the slide, the bridge kind of leaves me uncomfortable. I just maybe it's myopic, but I don't see a strong enough link to uncovering where the lack of restraint comes from. So, can you just say a bit more about that? Because the three that are chosen there don't seem to show the key.
Okay. So I think one of the critical ones is obviously faith. Yeah, it's like or confidence. You hear these teachings, and the Buddha says, "Well, anger is going to be bad for you." And you think, "Whoa, you're right." Actually, you know it already. Yeah, it's pretty obvious already that anger is going to be bad for you. So, but the Buddha reinforced that. And the second thing that the Buddha does, he gives you quite good tools to deal with the anger. I mean, the problem for most people in the world, they may realize that anger is not good for them, but they haven't really got the tools to deal with this. And without the tools, actually, it is quite tricky. Yeah, even though it should be obvious, actually, it can be quite tricky for most people. So all you really need to do sometimes is read the suttas. The Buddha says, well, anger leads to all of these problems. It leads you to, you get bad relationship with the people around you. It really drives the kind of the cycle of rebirth. Ultimately, anger is what kind of leads to wars and to violence in society and to all of these big problems social problems that we have. It's a very, very big problem. And if you don't deal with it, conditions will conspire against you and make it worse. You get more angry, yeah? Very easy to read the papers and get angry, not very hard, yeah? There's so much bad stuff going on in the world, so you don't read those papers quite so much anymore. Yeah? So it starts with faith. That's a very important part of this. And
perhaps we could say
yeah.
the lack of application of the teachings. So application-ness, not doing it.
Yeah.
So if you applied the teachings, so you talk about the toolkit, then that would point you to how to apply the toolkit to restraint.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to apply, but the thing is that to apply the teachings, you really have to feel that you want to do it. Yeah. I mean, you can't force yourself to apply the teaching. This is where faith is so important, because faith is the energy that drives the application. And so this is why working on the idea of faith and confidence actually is very powerful, because you start to really want to do these things. It comes automatically. You don't have to kind of force yourself to do it anymore. In the beginning, you force yourself a little bit simply because you have some degree of confidence. But the more that faith is built up, the more these things happen as a matter of course, automatically. And this is one of the reasons why Ajahn Brahmali does not talk much about this effort thing, because he, I think, comes very strongly from confidence in his teachings.
Ajahn, maybe this
stay until midnight.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what some of these other Buddhist traditions are lacking. Maybe the lay ones, where there's not a lot of faith in it. Because some of the very dry people are.
Yeah.
They're lacking that kind of sweetness.
Yeah, I think that. That may be one of the problems, yeah. Or faith can be many things. I mean, a lot of people claim to have faith, but the faith can often be very superficial. I've got so much faith, you come down and bow down to the Buddha, but there is some kind of faith there, but it may not be the faith that actually leads you to practice very hard on the path, for example. Faith comes in all kinds of qualities, and you really have to have the one which gives confidence, the confidence faith that drives you forward on the path, yeah. And I think, you're looking at all the lay groups around the world, and there's so many lay groups, like everywhere, and not having that figurehead of someone like Ajahn Brahmali, who you kind of look at and think, wow, this is a person who has got some really special qualities that actually reminds you what the Dhamma is about. Because it's nice to read about the Dhamma qualities, but you have to actually see the qualities in real existence to be able to really, that's when it becomes powerful. And when I see someone like Ajahn Brahmali after being around it for 25 years, I mean, sometimes I'm fault-finding and I feel and it's bad, but my overall feeling of Ajahn Brahmali is actually someone who is someone who's really got the act together in a very, very powerful way. And to see that and to be around that, I think is a very important part of the idea of faith. And I think a lot of these lay meditation groups, they are missing out on that. Very often they haven't got someone who really is really, really special and really cool. Yeah, cool in the kind of higher sense of the word. And so that is, I think that's a problem. And I think often people don't grasp the power of, having. Even in our Buddha society in Perth, people often don't quite grasp what is actually going on in this monastery and the power of some of these things. Ajahn Brahm goes in and he tells a few jokes on Friday night, and some people get it because some people have they have that clarity and they see what's happening. But I think a lot of people don't quite get it, and it takes time for them to really come around that. So anyway, okay, let's move on to the next one. So what is the cause of this? And I've talked about this already a little bit. So you want to see the noble ones, yeah? This is the Sappuris Aryadasana, is that what it is? I'm not sure now what the Pali is. Aryadasananga, something like that. Not wanting to hear the teaching of the noble ones. So these things obviously go together. And then the last one there, very interesting, is the fault-finding mind. One of Ajahn Brahm's teachings that he taught a lot in the old days. You don't hear quite so much about it anymore, but he used to talk about this. It's called the Uparambhacitta in Pali. So, this is kind of one of the fundamental aspects on this path. And if you remember that sutta we saw before, which is Anguttara 10.61, it actually starts at this point. This is the beginning point. And there's a very good reason for that, because this is where really you start to become a Buddhist. You see the noble ones, you see how they act, you listen to their teachings, yeah? And as you do that, either you don't get it because you are too deluded or whatever, and of course that happens to many people, but if you are ready for it, you will recognize there's something here which is very powerful and beautiful, and then you get drawn to it, and from that this whole path actually starts. So seeing the noble ones, yeah, this is such an important part of this path. You can do that to some extent by reading the suttas, but it takes a very kind of special person to just rely on the suttas. There are some people who have done that. There's a very famous monk, a German monk in Sri Lanka, who we have a picture of downstairs, Jnana Vimala. And he, very famously, he didn't really have any kind of very inspiring teachers. He just read the suttas and kind of went off and practiced on his own. And a lot of people say some people say he was an arahant, some people say he was an arya. Who knows exactly what the story was? But anyway, he was a very, very powerful person. So, but most people will also need that vision of somebody. Yeah, the two coming together. That is where faith very often comes up. And this is one of the great things about Buddhism in the present day. We have those two pillars. Yeah? We have the pillar still in the present day of noble beings. I don't have much doubt about that myself, that we still have the noble ones in this world. We still have that ability to see them, to be in their presence, to understand that the Dhamma is still efficacious, it still gives the results that we want to give. Yeah, if you can see the results in real life, that is the most powerful thing here. And we also, and this is kind of the powerful combination, we also have the ancient teachings of the Buddha, yeah, passed down through 2,500 years. And that too, we know with a fairly high degree of certainty that this actually are the real teachings of the Buddha. And those two things together, an ancient tradition combined with people still practicing it fully, it's like dynamite, two very beautiful things coming together. Yeah. And so I love both of those aspects of the teachings. The reading the suttas on the one hand, and then kind of being around people who are special. The two things together is very kind of powerful. And of course, a problem for this is the fault-finding mind, the Uparambhacitta. And there's a reason why that comes up here, because if you have too much of the fault-finding mind, it's going to be hard to give rise to that faith and confidence in these teachings. It's always possible to find fault, yeah? And it's not, Sometimes people think they're really clever because they can kind of pinpoint the exact fault. Yeah, I'm really smart when it comes to faults. And we have all been there and done that probably. But it is not very useful. Yeah, it is actually very, very dangerous because if you have something very beautiful, look at that beauty of the thing you have. Don't see the negative side. There's always going to be something you can find fault with, regardless of what you have. And maybe you are very clever. Maybe we are very smart at finding faults. And we become, whatever. But actually, it's not really clever at all because you're missing the whole point of this practice, which is abandoning that so you can give rise to the real faith that then gives rise to the joy and happiness that comes from that more fundamental saddha, that more fundamental confidence that comes from really believing in these things. So watch out for that fault-finding mind. I remember Ajahn Brahm taught about this so much in the early days. Remember that, Ajahn Nisarana? Yeah, he was on and on about the fault-finding mind. And I suspect that he must have had a bit of a fault-finding mind himself, because otherwise, usually people talk about their own experiences. Yeah, that's usually the way it goes. And, I'm no slouch myself when it comes to fault-finding mind. So So it's one of those things, that really are very useful to remember. Look at the good in things. If you found gold, don't look for that tiny defilement in the gold because you won't enjoy the gold anymore. If you found gold, don't look for diamonds. Yeah, be satisfied with the gold rather than kind of finding something which is even better. So this is one of the critical junctures of the path because this is where the path really gets going. Without the noble ones in the world, without the Buddha, we are like boats without rudders, boats without engines, like a hull on the ocean, being flung about by the wind, by the currents of the ocean, and not really going in any kind of direction, just allowing the defilements and the conditions and causes of the world to drive us around without purpose, without any aim, without any kind of goal. To be able to put that aim inside of us, we need to hear the noble ones. This is what this really is about. The Dhamma cannot really arise inside a person without hearing the word of another. The paratogosa, as it says in Majjhima Nikaya 43, the word of another, not the word from beyond, as I.B. Horner said, but the word of another. The famous mistranslation by I.B. Horner. And this is really, really critical. And this is why people say you have to take the opportunity when the word of the Buddha is around, because it gets lost again. This is the thing that enables us to move forward. And it is fascinating now to kind of contemplate, well, what if this particular factor here was put 2 items higher up? Would that still work? And I think it would, because 2 items higher up, that's where the meditation begins. Yeah, that's where the sati starts. So of course, if you're going to have success in meditation, if you're going to have success in knowing how to do satipatthana, and the Buddha specifically says that he could teach satipatthana for 100 years if he wanted to, if you're going to have success in that, again, you need that input of the Buddha showing you the right way. So it is possible that too could also be there. The only problem is that it's actually not found in that way anywhere else in the sutta. So this seems like a more natural place for it to be, because it fits with how it is elsewhere.
What did you say about the 100 years?
I think this is found in the Sihanada Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 12, where the Buddha says he could teach about Satipatthana, even if he was carried around by 2 people and they were asking questions continuously, he could answer questions about Satipatthana for 100 years without stopping, still not run out of answers about Satipatthana, something like that. Majjhima 12, check it out. Yeah. Okay. So towards the very end of the sutta. Yep. Okay, so what are the causes of this? The causes of this, and now we're going to a place where no other suttas really talk about this. Yeah, this is kind of one of the things that is unique about this sutta, talking about the causality that leads you to see the noble ones. And this can be quite useful. It can be useful. It tells us a little bit about why other people are not Buddhist, perhaps. And it could be many reasons. That might be one reason. But it also says something about us, how we can improve our relationship to the noble ones, and how to hear the good Dhamma in a better way. Yeah. So it's also useful for us to know this as well, because if we can do something with these prior factors, it enables us to listen to the Dhamma in a better way. So what is the cause? Cause is the following. And these things are disregard, being hard to admonish, having bad friends. Disregard is anadarya. Anadarya is a word you find Pachitya 54 for Pachitya reciters. Anadarya Pachitya 54. And it means something like disregard or disrespect, not listening to others. Yeah, not really interested in what other people have to say. Say, yeah, shut up, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Something like that. So, not listening to others. Yeah, so disrespect is also very, very close to this. Yeah, when you disrespect, you don't listen to others. You disregard them. You're not interested in what they have to say. So if you disregard the noble ones, how are you going to be listening to the Dhamma? There's no chance. So very obviously this is a problem here. Being hard to admonish is a very similar kind of thing. Dovachasata is the Pali word for this. And the idea, if you disregard the word of other people, you're not interested in what other people have to say to you, you're not really going to be interested in admonishment. You're not going to be interested in being corrected. You're not going to listen to what other people have to say. But I think this is a very important part of the path, this idea of being admonished. If you really are interested in improving yourself, that is what life is about, overcoming the defilement, moving forward. You would put your hands together in Anjali and say, thank you, if someone points you out a fault. You would have such gratitude. You said, thank you, teacher. Like even Venerable Sariputta does that famously in the suttas, where his sabong is kind of a bit funny, falling off or whatever, and this young novice points. Ajahn Brahmali likes this story. This young novice points out to him, "Oh, your sarong is falling off. You should correct it." And then Venerable Sariputta afterwards calls this little novice his teacher, because he points that out. So actually, we should really be grateful for admonishment, especially when it comes from the right place. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes admonishment comes from a bad place and maybe not so useful, but even then we can reflect on it. But certainly when it comes from the right place. And I would really recommend you to listen to Ajahn Brahmali when he gives talks. Ajahn Brahmali is a very unadmonishing kind of monk. He never admonishes everyone, pretty much. You have to get pretty dodgy before he admonishes you. But sometimes he does it more in a public setting. He does it during a Dhamma talk, for example, and he will say things. And you have to remember that when it says that in a Dhamma talk, usually it means that there is some problem that he wants to point out. So listen carefully to what he has to say during the Dhamma talks. You may pick up something. And don't think that it doesn't mean you. When Ajahn Brahmali says these things, he talks to everyone. Everyone is included. And sometimes you may think, maybe it's just me that he's talking about. He's probably reading my mind or something. There's another kind of thing there. So being easy to admonish is actually a very beautiful thing in the suttas. So it's something that we should be open to. So of course, sometimes we may not be ready for it. So then you should ask somebody properly, may I admonish you? It may not be the right time, or you may be in a bad mood or whatever. Don't do it then. But generally speaking, it's a very positive thing if it's done in the correct way. And then, of course, having bad friends, papa mitta. Another kind of very important one is the opposite of having the noble one as a friend. So as long as you have those bad friends, not very likely to have the noble ones as your friends. Bad friends lead you astray. And this, again, is this important idea that we are so conditioned by the external world. And we forget how conditioned we are. We forget how important these things are. When you have bad friends, they are going to influence you one way or another. There's no two ways about it. You know that because there's nothing inside of you that has the stability to withstand these kind of things. There will be some kind of influence. So never underestimate that. Hang out with the right kind of people. Have fellow Buddhists who think like you as your main friends. It doesn't mean we should never meet people who are not Buddhist or who practice the wrong way or to do bad things or whatever. We can, but we should not meet them in terms of friendship, in terms of hanging out with them. We should more meet them in terms of perhaps being a teacher or a counselor or someone who supports them, rather than having a kind of full or equal friendship with that kind of people. So don't underestimate this, and please don't underestimate the power of right friendship. Yeah, hang out in the right way, do the right things, hang out with the Buddha. Hang out with the Buddha. That's what we're doing now, really. Hang out with the suttas, yeah? And as you do that, then you are building this thing up. So bad friends are going to lead you astray. They're going to make you disregard the good friends. They're going to make you hard to admonish and all these other kind of things. So now we come to the very last factor. Yay! So good news. So this is kind of at the root of this whole sutta. And what is the very last factor? This is the one. Lack of conscience, imprudence, and negligence. And the Pali words here are hiri, lack of conscience, often translated as shame, a lack of shame. Imprudence is ottappa, often translated as fear, fear of consequences, imprudence, here called imprudence by Bhante Sujato. And negligence is pamada, one of these very fundamental things. Pamada, of course, Pamada, you're negligent about things. So this is the very kind of root here, which causes everything else, all the other problems. And you can see why, but probably the most important one of these is negligence. Negligence here, pamada, means that you are not heedful, you're not careful about your life, you don't really consider anything, you don't think things through, you are too involved with life to really kind of look at things in a bigger picture and ask yourself what is really going on, what is the point of all of this. And I think a lot of people in the world, they have often maybe too much suffering to really be able to think about things properly. And that can be really a big trap. You suffer so much that all you can think of is kind of survive from day to day and overcome all the problems that you have. You don't really have time not to be negligent. And so very often the answer in those situations is not to have compassion for people, have an understanding, and to kind of gradually help them out of that trap. And maybe then they become less negligent as a consequence. But this is a really big trap, If you haven't got that willingness to look at things properly, to be careful and circumspect in how you live your life, it's going to be very, very hard to get out of it. So you can see why this here is at the core of the problem. Of course, the reason why you are negligent might be because you're not listening to the noble people, the Aryas. So the Aryas kind of come before this in a certain way, not listening to the Aryas. So there's a mutual conditionality here between all of these factors. They all kind of work together. So it's very hard to set one first one, but here, this one is kind of put first. And when you are negligent, you don't have any conscience, You don't have any hiri. Hiri is this idea of feeling ashamed of what you're doing. And I don't think shame necessarily is a bad word to use here, but conscience might be better in some way. Shame is the feeling that you don't want other people to know what you have done. If you've done something you don't want other people to do, please don't tell others. You know there is a degree of shame there. Everybody knows what this means. Everyone has had this kind of experience from time to time. You don't want other people to know. And that is a good feeling. If you look at that feeling, you know that you don't want to do those things. If you use that to steer you in the right way, then a degree of shame, feeling that you don't want others to know, that is a positive thing to guide you in the right way. You can also call it conscience, the thing that stops you from doing something because it feels wrong. There's a feeling inside you, it knows, no, this isn't right. About to steal something, no, this feels really wrong. Okay, so you stop yourself. That conscience also is a very powerful thing to use. If you haven't got those things, you are really at a loss. People who are shameless, they have a big problem. But then there is the other one here, which is the idea of ottappa, of imprudence, lacking a fear of the consequences of what you do. And this is another very, very important part of life. And sometimes this is a very simple thing. It is just understanding that if you do something bad, you're going to go to prison, or you're going to get punished in some way or another. And this is often enough. You have to stop you from doing certain bad things. This is kind of the beginning of prudence. But some people don't even have that ability. They don't have the ability to understand the consequences of their actions in a more ordinary way. Why don't they have that? Well, basically because they are deluded. They sort of know it deep down that it may have these consequences. They don't take it fully on board. We have all made those mistakes probably as well. Yeah, don't fully take on board the consequences of our actions. So you understand that. But of course, here it has to do with also much deeper things. The idea of ottappa, or prudence, has to do with the understanding of how your actions affect your mental life. You understand that when you do something bad, you will reap the consequences right here and right now. You will feel bad about yourself. You will dirty your mind, quite literally. Your mind becomes less beautiful, less bright as a consequence of your bad actions. Do you want to dirty your mind? Remember, the mind is compared to gold in the suttas. And for gold to shine, for gold to be beautiful, it has to be refined. In exactly the same way, if you want to refine your mind, if you want to make your mind beautiful, you have to get rid of these defilements. You don't want to dirty your mind. Remember that. A dirty mind is painful. A bright mind is beautiful. Any little thing that you regret later on, any little thing where you go against your conscience, is going to stop you from experiencing the bliss on this path. Every little thing. So be as blameless as you possibly can. And as you do that, you're kind of giving this path a very powerful impetus at the very beginning to kind of make the whole thing kind of roar of energy. Because you build up the energy by doing these kind of things. And of course, in Buddhism, the kind of big imprudence, the big way of having ottappa is to also remember the past lives. To understand this idea of samsara. And if you think about samsara in the right way, if you consider the idea of being reborn, carrying on again and again, if you think about that in the right way, it just sounds absolutely terrible. If there is even a smidgen of chance that there is rebirth, even a smidgen of a chance, then you should do everything you possibly can to get out of it, because that is how terrible it looks when you look at it from a distance. Be reborn 1,000,000 times, doing roughly the same thing. Does that sound nice? No. And so this is kind of the big thing about ottappa. It's a bit more difficult to get into because it's harder to have emotions towards that. It becomes a bit more intellectual, but that is what it is about. And this is the way you are not negligent. This is how you are careful. This is how you are circumspect in how you live your life, because you understand that how you live matters enormously for your own happiness. If you really want to be happy, if you want to have a good life, if you want to find the meaning of what this existence is all about, then this is the only way to do it. So non-negligence is really the path. So all of these factors, you probably heard about them before, so they may not add all that much, but it's nice to see them again. Probably, anyway, I sort of enjoy seeing them again, and it kind of puts them in a slightly different context and causal sequence. So there you are. It's only just over 2 hours only. Well, that's too early. We can't go yet. Is anyone who is desperate enough to have any more questions? Or no, I'm just joking. Does anyone have any more questions or any points that should be brought up at this point? Venerable Nisarna.
With pamada, could you say impulsiveness? Would that be an aspect of?
Yeah, I think.
Some people
are
really impulsive. They don't think at all. They just do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And sometimes it's not exactly the same, because I think impulse can be okay if sometimes you feel you're coming from the right place. You don't have to, and you know it's right. But impulsiveness can be one aspect of pamada. I would agree with you. People don't really think properly. Yeah, so that's a good point.
So the impulse to hug my mother is not like the impulse for Pavlova or something.
No, well, I think you're using the word impulse then in a slightly different way. You're using impulse in the sense of inclination, to hug your mum. And so no problem. But even the inclination for Pavlova, whatever, is it's a small thing. You don't kind of jump onto it, but you kind of you do it in a reasonable way, and that's fine. But I think impulse there, the way you use it is a bit different. It's more like inclination of the mind, probably, to hug your mum, which is there are absolute differences. I think one of the nice things about the sutta, one of the nice things that it gives you is some ideas about when you can act on impulse. Yeah? And sometimes you know that you are doing the right thing. Sometimes you know your mind is clear. You are very you have no doubt that what you're doing is right. Sometimes it feels good. Yeah, you impulsively give a gift. Okay, can't be wrong. Yeah, it feels nice. So it really depends on your mental state. So I think impulse. You have to kind of. There's no kind of one-sided answer to that question.
Are there any suttas to recommend if there is stickiness around that? So relatives or sticky friends that don't have the conscience. You don't want to have the fault-finding mind, but how to approach it when you're monastic?
Yeah, well, I think I think after a while you learn to have compassion on people, and you understand people from a compassionate point of view. You understand that no one wants to be stupid, no one wants to be deluded, no one wants to do bad things. They just don't get it. And how can you not have compassion when you see that? It's just, it's almost like sad in a sense. And a lot of the world is like that. They're blind. They're walking around in the dark. They don't know what they're doing. They're hurting themselves and others at the same time, not knowing what they're doing. How can you not have compassion for everyone in that case? Perpetrator, victim, everyone. And sometimes it's difficult if you are too close to somebody, like they are a family member or whatever. It's difficult to get enough distance to get that kind of compassionate view because you know them too well and you have too much kind of feeling of, well, they are a person, they know what they're doing, they should know what they're doing, right? They don't, this is the thing. And to learn that and to be able to see even close people in that way, that is often the big part of the challenge. Like your parents or whatever, they whatever it is. And even if you have the best of parents, there's always some niggling things there. Okay, everyone happy? Yeah? Okay, should we do the end? Yep. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. Okay, there you are. I apologize a little bit for, not too much, but a little bit for keeping you for so long because it's a bit over time, but hopefully you're okay with that. Okay, let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.